All right, hello everyone, and welcome to our debate. My group and I will be debating about the neurodiversity affirming practices. This course is conducted by Ball State. It is SPCE 619, Professional Issues in Applied Behavior Analysis, Section 812, and our instructor is Christine Cukar-Capizzi. First, we'll be talking about the group members. So I am Morgan. I'll be arguing for, and I'll also be the moderator.
I'm Samantha Munoz, and I'm also arguing for.
My name is Eliany Munoz, and I am arguing against.
And I'm Michel, Melian, and I'm arguing against.
Perfect. So to get this started, we wanted to kind of give like a introduction, history/background of neurodiversity affirming practices. So we'll start with the definition. Neurodiversity affirming practices, also referred as NAP, is defined by practices that show inclusivity and acceptance to individuals' unique needs. Everyone watching this debate should have heard or may be familiar with NAP, but this history/background should give you a better understanding. This does not only apply to people with ASD, individuals with other neurodevelopment disorders can also benefit from the ideas discussed in the debate in inclusive care. Botha and his international group of autistic scholars discussed this in a compiled research. They're kind of define the origins of the neurodiversity and the first time it was spoken about. They mentioned Judy Singer's and Harvey Blum's writings when they discussed this, but they are not the scholars that take credit for the discovery of NAP. Rather, they give credit to neurodivergent individuals that were working and advocating for themselves and others. Botha and others decide to look further and deeper to kind of find when NAP was the first introduced or discussed. They go on to find it was collectively theorized and developed by autistic activists, primarily in the autistic community. One of the ways that they discussed it was to this email list called Independent Living. This was in the mid-1990s. Another group that was mentioned goes by ISN't. It stands for the Institute for the Study of the Neurologically Typical. Singer goes on to kind of write her own master's kind of on the subject. She still doesn't take credit for it. In 1998, Botha later discovers that the creator of the independent living email chain, they created their own findings recently in 2023. Their name is Decker. One of the quotes that they talk about that they had on the email chain was neurological diversity of people, the atypical among a society provide the different perspectives needed to generate new ideas and advancements, whether they be technological, cultural, artistic, or otherwise. Essentially, he was discussing the ideas that neurodiversity is not something that should be changed or conformed, but to a mold, but rather we should celebrate it and essentially an idea of creative new ideas. All this and more has formed the basis for the now flourishing field of neurodiversity studies, which spans across the arts, humanities, social sciences, and different types of therapy. Now we'll be going into visuals to kind of give us a beginning statement on the different arguments. First, we'll be looking at the advantages of NAP.
So here we have our visual for advantages of neurodiversity affirming practices. In this debate, the argument for being in pro of NAP will expand upon the ability of neurodiversity affirming practices to allow practitioners to create personalized interventions for their clients. Along the same vein, these interventions are built upon the idea that therapy should be administered using a person-first approach instead of a disability-first epicenter. When practitioners use NAP, self-advocacy skills may be taught to people with autism spectrum disorder or other diverse groups, which in turn may build their confidence or improve their overall self-image because NAP focuses on who the individual is rather than who they can be. Neurodiversity affirming practices are different than therapies that have typically been seen in the history of providing services for this community, in that neuronormative standards are disregarded in favor of the skills required to live an independent life. However, this doesn't drive a wedge between neurodiverse and neurotypical people, but rather promotes acceptance by neurotypical people of neurodiverse people. And this is because neurodiversity affirming practices include educating neurotypical populations, which may counter any preconceived ideas or notions that others have about neurodiversity, and therefore promote overall acceptance of neurodiverse populations. In other words, the lack of information is a barrier to acceptance of those that are different than oneself.
Now we'll be looking over the visual for the against arguments.
Yeah, here we have the visual for against arguments. This visual features a balance scale to symbolize the need for integrating neurodiversity affirming practices and applied behavior analysis. On the left side, the circular shape represents inclusion, acceptance, and diversity. The brain symbolizes neurodiversity affirming practices.
All right, now
While,
oh, sorry.
while on the right side, the structure shape like puzzle pieces and arrows represent applied behavior analysis, ABA, emphasizing skill development, behavior modification, and support for independence. A well-defined balanced scale in the center visually connects both approaches, indicating the need for integration to ensure both acceptance and the necessity support for individuals on the autism spectrum.
All right, that was our visual on the against argument. Now I'll be getting into the actual debate by going into the first pro argument.
Okay, so as discussed briefly by my teammate Morgan in the introduction, neurodiversity affirming practices acknowledge the differences between clients that are served. This can include differences relating to social skills, life skills and independence, communication, stereotypies, restrictive and maladaptive behaviors, among other things. And these things are important to acknowledge when providing services for such a diverse population, because without neurodiversity affirming practices, the broad range of individuals requiring services would receive subpar care that does not consider their differences in needs. As stated by Isuno Garcia and colleagues in their article, Neurodiversity in Promoting the Well-Being of Children on the Autism Spectrum, when practitioners utilize NAP, they can create and implement protocols that are tailored to each individual's needs rather than one treatment plan or just a few treatment plans that cater pretty poorly to an entire group of people. In addition, neurodiversity affirming practices give those with autism and other disabilities more opportunities to choose their course of care because it's a collaborative effort between practitioner and client, as stated by Suno Garcia and colleagues, which was outlined in that same article. The voices of those with ASD has to be at the forefront of discussions regarding interventions and offered support strategies by practitioners. The practitioners can't just make these decisions without client knowledge and client input, because that is not a collaborative approach for provision of services. Neurodiversity affirming practices include the perspectives of people with ASD in research and clinical practice, as many traditional approaches often overlook those lived experiences of those they seek to help. In the article by Donaldson and colleagues, they attest that neurodiversity affirming practices recognize that the individuals with ASD are the experts of their own needs, not the practitioners. What Donaldson and colleagues are emphasizing is that practitioners who provide care to neurodiverse populations, we must take care to not consider ourselves the experts of care. While practitioners do spend a lot of time and energy learning about neurodiversity, there is no teacher like personal experience. That is why It's of the utmost importance that practitioners do not work exclusively for their clients, but alongside them to identify their needs and implement the most effective interventions for that individual. Therefore, neurodiversity affirming practices are absolutely necessary for serving this population to the highest standard of care.
All right, now we'll be hearing the rebuttal from the against side for these arguments.
While neurodiversity affirming practices focus on individualized care is commendable, it overlooks the potential benefits of standardized protocols that ensures consistency and efficiency across diverse client needs. Reliance solely on tolerated approaches can lead to discrepancies in service quality and create challenges in training and resource allocation. Moreover, many clients share commonalities that it can be effectively addressed through the evidence base. Standardized protocols, which can enhance overall care while still allowing for necessary adjustments based on individual circumstances. Therefore, a balanced approach that integrates both tolerated and standardized methods may provide more equitable and effective care for all clients.
While neurodiversity affirming practices emphasis on incorporating autistic perspective is important, it can inadvertently lead to an over-reliance on individual preferences that may not always align with evidence-based practices. Not all individuals with ASD have the knowledge or experience to navigate complex care options, and their choices might be influenced by limited understanding of available interventions. Additionally, prioritizing individual voices can dilute the focus on collective, standardized approaches that have been proven effective across a broader population. A more integrated model that combines personal input with established best practices may ensure that individuals receive both the tailored support they desire and the quality care that is grounded in empirical evidence.
All right, now that we went over the first argument and rebuttal, we'll be getting into the against arguments. First argument.
Smith and Shattuck 2022 argue that neurodiversity affirming practices conflict with traditional evidence-based interventions like applied behavior analysis, which aim to teach adaptive skills and improve quality of life. While neurodiversity advocates emphasize acceptance of autistic individuals without attempting to modify behavior, this approach risks neglecting the needs of those with significant support requirements. The authors caution that prioritizing neurodiversity over intervention could limit individuals' opportunity for societal integration, employment, and independence, as society may not fully accommodate neurodivergence. They assert that effective evidence-based interventions should complement neurodiversity principles to ensure that all individuals receive necessary support to thrive.
Pellegano and Den Harding 2023 argue that while neurodiversity affirming practices promote acceptance of autism as a natural variation, they may unintentionally overlook the real challenges many autistic individuals face. A key concern is that NAPs might prioritize acceptance over intervention, potentially limiting access to necessary evidence-based supports like applied behavior analysis. For some individuals, especially those with significant needs, interventions are crucial for developing essential skills, managing challenging behaviors, and improving quality of life. By focusing primarily on acceptance, NAPs could risk minimizing the importance of personalized, effective intervention that address the diverse needs within the autism spectrum.
All right, now we'll be giving the rebuttal against the argument. The argument against NAP brings up great points for clarity and improvement on the topic of neurodiversity affirming practices. I first want to touch base on their point of NAP and conflicting with the traditions of ABA and how they teach adaptive skills. There has been plenty of research and articles on how to improve and change ABA since the beginning of its time. Even in the past 10 years, we have all seen major changes and improvements in the field itself, and just major growth from people joining it. There has been plenty of, the field is forever changing and evolving to provide best practice. Knowing that the purpose of applied behavior analysis is to better the individual's life and experience, it's hard not to see the need for neurodiversity affirming care within their interventions. Botha and colleagues in 2024 discussed the past harm and closed-minded thinking that the field of ABA has shown the community of neurodivergent people. Allies of the community and autistic scholars, such as individuals in the ISN't Act, advocate for the inclusion of NAP in all of their therapy settings due to the individuality and the person-first theory of the interventions in ABA. Sylvester and Rankin's 2024 articles, findings on NAP improving individual self-image and confidence, would imply that neurodivergent individuals can only get better care through the addition of NAP in therapy and settings. Because by hearing their voice, they get a better understanding of who their self is, and being able to advocate for themselves builds a whole world of confidence that we could never build for them. NAP does leave interventions open to interpretation for the BCBA and others working with ABA. I argue that more personalized and inclusive the interventions are, the better they can help individuals with significant support needs and intense behaviors. Being able to personalize the programs and ask the individuals with ASD what they want to improve and how goes a long way in therapy. Just them feeling included can create a behavior change in itself. Even for the individuals who are nonverbal, finding a way to make them feel included or make them feel like they're making a choice in their intervention, or they are being able to tell us what their needs are, can make a behavior change. My peers discuss the idea of these individuals struggling to fit in society through jobs, shopping, and just any other society-driven activities. I do agree that these activities are important for people with ASD to live a fulfilling and independent life, but I do not agree that NAP is the problem in this equation. I agree with Botha on the idea of changing society's perspective on ASD and other neurodevelopmental disorders. NAP ultimately helps us be able to ask these individuals what they want to work on and improve, so they have a say in what they're changing and like what they're conforming, rather than feeling like they're just made to conform to feel happy and independent. The topic should shift more to educating others, more like how my colleague earlier was talking about educating neuronormative people on the idea of NAP and how the people's brains work. Rather, they just are different variations of thinking and doing things, rather than thinking that it is a disability. Now we'll be going into the pro argument. So my rebuttal will definitely lead me into what I'm arguing for the neurodevelopmental community. All right, so the neurodiversity affirming practices help support individuals' needs and help them gain confidence in themselves, as stated earlier. By switching the view of neurodevelopmental disabilities to a variation of how the human brain can be, from the idea of conforming individuals to a socially acceptable mold, is the point of NAP. NAP does this through teaching acceptance and personalized interventions that fit each individual's unique needs. They have been opening a new idea of thinking when it comes to ASD and what interventions fit in this new idea. So, for example, unmasking or demasking that these traits that were formerly viewed as distractions, interruptions, rudeness, etc., and accepting them for what they are, sensory needs and comforting techniques. So changing the idea that people shouting out loud in public or vocally or physically stimming is an interruption or rude, or not making eye contact, or any of these molds that we have formed for people with ASD to fit into, because we think that that is what's going to make them feel comfortable in society or fit into society. Rather, we should change the normal, quote unquote, normal idea of what is normal. To support these ideas, I went over and tried to do research on different practices that adopted NAP into their field. So I found a couple different people who made articles on kind of adopting these ideas and the benefits of them. First, I wanted to go over Sylvester and Rankin. They support the adoption of NAP in school systems and all other therapy types. They work in school systems a lot, and their paper discusses the improvement in individuals' well-beings and autonomy of people with neurodevelopmental disabilities. Person-centered therapy ensures individuality of the intervention and best practice. So people in the school system thinks it can make a world of difference of people with autism being able to be in the school system and learn just like any other child does. I also found Birch. This is a speech pathologist. She discusses her experience with NAP and her therapy throughout a journal she wrote for ASHA. So that's kind of like their ethics page, like their community that they have to follow. So it's out there for any other SLP to read. So that's really beneficial for NAP to get out there and be known. She emphasized the inclusivity that comes with NAP in her care and the change to the masking traits of her speech therapy. Overall, she promoted adopting a neurodiversity affirming school counseling approach, underscores a shift that supports the well-being and autonomy of neurodivergent students. And lastly, I found an occupational therapist point of view on this, because they work with a lot of people with autism with their sensory needs and just any other items. Downman and their colleagues are occupational therapists who came together to discuss the morality issues without adopting NAP to their therapy. This paper argues that an ethical, moral, and just occupational therapy practice should affirm to neurodevelopment ways of being. So all of these colleagues wrote papers together to make it work, to make it understandable that that neurodiversity is just the best practice for these individuals with autism. Now we'll be going into the rebuttal for this argument.
While neurodiversity affirming practices emphasize acceptance and celebrate neurological differences, a potential concern is that this approach may risk deprioritizing interventions that are crucial for individuals with autism spectrum disorder to function effectively in various environments. While it is important to acknowledge and respect individual differences, focusing solely on sensory needs and comforting techniques may inadvertently limiting opportunities for skill acquisition and adaptations to societal demands. Many individuals with SID face significant challenges in communication, daily living skills, and social interactions, which require target behavioral interventions. Without addressing this through evidence-based practices, there is a risk that some individuals may struggle with tasks that are essential for independent social participation. Balancing acceptance with the need for practical skill development is the key to ensuring that individuals with SID are not limited by their environment.
A rebuttal to Sylvester and Ranke 2024 and Birch 2023 argues that while NAP promotes inclusivity and well-being, it may not address the functional challenges individuals with neurodevelopmental disabilities face. Reducing focus on masking in therapy could limit the development of vital social and communication skills, which are crucial for navigating broader societal settings. While NAP emphasizes autonomy, it risks the prioritizing evidence-based interventions that are essential for improving adaptive behaviors and achieving greater independence. A balanced approach is needed to ensure both acceptance and functional progress.
All right, now we'll be going over the against second argument.
Neurodiversity affirming practices while promoting acceptance of neurodivergent individuals may inadvertently neglect the need for individualized, evidence-based interventions that target functional impairments. Allen, 2024, emphasized the importance of respecting autistic traits. However, this approach may risk minimizing the necessity of interventions that address behaviors which limit autonomy or quality of life. By focusing too heavily on acceptance, critical behavioral challenges like aggression, self-injury, or severe communication deficits may be left untreated, potentially leading to long-term harm. Furthermore, the alignment with the neurodiversity paradigm may shift ABA away from its empirical roots, compromising its effectiveness is fostering measurable improvement in client outcomes.
Matsuda, Reeve, and Lugo 2020 advocate for neurodiversity affirming practices within applied behavior analysis, ABA, emphasizing the need to honor individual differences and promote acceptance over normalization. However, an argument against this approach is that prioritizing neurodiversity affirming practices may inadvertently undermine the effectiveness of evidence-based interventions designed to improve quality of life for individuals with autism spectrum disorder. By focusing on acceptance over behavioral modification, these practices could delay or limit access to essential therapies that target skill acquisition, functional independence, and adaptive behaviors, which are crucial for enhancing long-term outcomes. Furthermore, the emphasis on acceptance may minimize the role of interventions aimed at addressing challenges that significantly impact daily living, potentially limiting individuals' opportunities for meaningful participation in broader societal context.
All right, that was the against second argument. Now we'll be going into the last rebuttal.
Okay, when utilized as intended, NAP has a different effect on the individual than stated by the opposition. While it is true that neurodiversity affirming practices focus heavily on individuals' need for care, when you consider the lens of ABA, as my opponent has, there absolutely are BACB ethical compliance codes that consider this one of the important aspects of provision of services to clients. Ethical Compliance Code 1.07 outlines the importance of cultural responsiveness and diversity when delivering services, which ensures that practitioners consider these differences when providing care, and NAP does this. Code 2.12 considers the medical needs of each individual served, which is demonstrated by neurodiversity affirming practices, including teaching independence and life skills and things of that sort for each person's needs. Codes 2.13 and 2.14 specifically state that any interventions implemented must be built upon the diverse needs of the client and their stakeholders, which again is a foundational principle of neurodiversity affirming practices. Suffice to say, the Behavior Analyst Certification Board has many ethical standards that align with the core of NAP. When practitioners accurately understand NAP, they are able to create programs targeting skills which are necessary for the individual's independent living. NAP does not minimize opportunities for individualized services, but instead highlights each person's needs among a variety of differences in the community to allow for personalized care and provision of services as outlined in all of those codes that I have previously discussed. In comparison to the evaluation of NAP made by the opposition, Pliskin and Crehan explain that therapists using NAP properly consider the individual regarding difference between what is necessary for service provision and the treatment goals versus unnecessary programs just in the name of conforming to neuronormative standards.
All right, that was the end of our debate points, but we will have our final statements from each side given. First, we'll be doing our pro.
So to recap all of the things that NAP is advantageous for, neurodiversity affirming practices are a tool utilized when working with people of the neurodivergent community in a variety of capacities. As I spoke about earlier, this can include social skills, communication, life skills, maladaptive behaviors, and things of that sort. In the case of ABA, NAP is most often utilized with the ASD population, and it is an important component of provision of services for this group because it highlights the differences of those within the population to provide the most effective individualized care. NAP allows practitioners to implement programs that are relevant to each client's personal needs without conforming to neurotypical standards by targeting only which skills are necessary for that client to live independently. In addition, NAP allows neurodivergent people to have more influence in their care, as well as boosting their confidence and autonomy. And NAP also promotes acceptance of the community's differences as more people are educated about autism spectrum disorder and the unique needs of those in this community.
Now we'll be hearing the final statement from our against side.
In conclusion, while neurodiversity affirming practices promote acceptance and inclusivity for neurodivergent individuals, they may unintentionally compromise the benefits of evidence-based interventions, such as applied behavior analysis. Critics argued that focusing primarily on acceptance risk, neglecting critical behavioral interventions that target functional impairments such as communication deficits and challenging behavior, which are essential for improving quality of life and fostering independence.
NAP's emphasis on autonomy may minimize the need for structured, personalized interventions, potentially limiting long-term opportunity for individuals with autism spectrum disorder to thrive in broader societal context. Therefore, a balanced approach that integrates both neurodiversity principles and evidence-based practices is necessary to ensure optimal outcomes for individuals across the autism spectrum.
All right, now we'll be going into a Q&A from an audience perspective. I'll be proposing two different questions, one for the against and one for the for, just for them to argue off of the information that was obtained for this project. The audience wants to know from the pro side if ABA is moving towards NAP, or do you guys think it's already formed to be inclusive enough?
ABA is a new field, and it is continuing to grow and change as practitioners learn new things, like how to behave ethically or how to best serve the populations that we do provide services for. I definitely think that ABA is working towards that, But I don't believe that ABA is quite there as far as accepting clients for the people that they are, and realizing that we as practitioners are there to highlight the things that make them who they are, while assisting in only the necessary things that everyone needs to live independently. As a practitioner myself, I have seen goals made by others in this field where the client's well-being is not the priority, but instead it was about making those around them comfortable. NAP encourages clients to be who they are, and I think ABA definitely has some ways to go before flipping that narrative because of its history, but I do think we're heading in the right direction.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that thought out answer. And we also have a question for the against argument. Are y'all completely against adding NAP into ABA, or do you think it's standing alone is not enough? Or do you think if it has another intervention to support it, would it be beneficial for the ABA field?
It is not about being completely against adding neurodiversity affirming practices to applied behavior analysis, but rather about founding a balanced approach. Integrating NAP with ABA can enhance acceptance and support for neurodivergent individuals while still addressing functional skills and behaviors. Combining both can help create a more holistic interventions that respects autonomy and promotes a skill development.
All right, thank you for that answer. This will be our conclusion of our neurodiversity affirming practices debate. Thank you guys for watching.